Okay, hello everyone. My name is Ray, and I've been considering making a guide playlist series thing for aircraft carriers. It's been quite a while since I've done something like this. I think close to about 2 years now. And I feel like it should be time to do like a more updated, more recent guide for people who are just coming to the game or players who are interested in the class and just don't know where to start. I feel like a YouTube series would be very helpful for that kind of thing. So here I am trying to start out with this new series, and I think a perfect place to start out will be aircraft carrier builds, instead of just going in and just showcasing each individual carrier, because before you even go into battle you have to spec your ship out, and aircraft carrier builds are all over the place. A lot of people like to run different things, so I will try to give a in-depth explanation for each individual skill and modules that are available to this class. And if you guys are new here and has never seen or heard of me before, I am a North American CC. I primarily known for aircraft carriers, but I do play other ships like surface ships and such, like cruisers. For the most part, my channel is based around the aircraft carrier class. So if you are new here and you're interested in this class, feel free to subscribe, like, and share my channel around. We are very close to 5K, something that I've been slacking on lately for YouTube content, but yeah, I figured now is a good time to just come back to it and try to grind for 5K, 10K. So without further ado, we can first start out with the equipment. So as you can see here, this is pretty much what my old build and such, but we can start from the very beginning. So slot 1 is a no-brainer, really. You want to spec into everything that increases your plane speed or plane survivability. That's basically how you're going to be specing out each individual carrier. And there's not much unique different types of builds when it comes to this class. So slot 1, definitely going to take the aircraft squadron return speed. Definitely want to be taking that so that it doesn't take forever for you to launch another squadron or wait for them to return. Yeah. Slot 2, another no-brainer. I don't know why you would ever slot into DCP, but aircraft engines modification 1 is definitely the way to go. 10% engine boost duration is very helpful. Increases your time to press W and S. You can speed up and slow down. Slot 3 is more controversial. There's not really much you can put in here because the issue with slot 3 is, I mean, sure, you can go secondary spec like Graf Zeppelin or a German aircraft carrier, but we're currently in this state of aircraft carriers. It's not very worth considering because you just don't know when in the match you'll be able to run it down and get into secondary range of anything, because the majority of the carriers in the game, secondary range is pretty poor, except for, let's say, like the Soviet or the German carriers. But I mean, if you get in range of something, you're most likely gonna die because you just don't have any type of way of defending yourself other than just relying on RNG. The torpedo modification 1, aircraft modification 1, these both just increase your attack time. This basically means after you've left click once, and then your reticle starts to turn green and is ready to release its ordnance, that phase right there will be increased. So for torpedo bombers, it's 5 seconds. For rockets, it's 2 seconds. Whether or not it's worth is up to you guys. It's pretty much like there's no correct answer for any of this. And then the last one, this basically just increases your torpedo speed by 5%. We'll get back to this, but I don't recommend taking this ever, especially on some aircraft carriers like, let's say, Aquila. The Aquila is known to have very, very slow torpedoes. One of the slowest in the game currently, because her torpedoes right now, her torpedoes come at 30 knots stock. Okay, 30 knots with arming distance of 403. Now, one thing that I'll just briefly go over it right here. One thing a lot of people don't know about speccing into torpedo speed, slot 3, is sure, you get the torpedo speed increase. In this case, it goes up to 32 knots, but your torpedo arming distance jumps as well. In this case, it jumped from 403 to 423, and this scales with however fast the torpedo itself goes, because it is a certain set of distance it has to travel before the torpedo is ready to arm. So this is like a double-edged sword, so I don't recommend taking this. I just recommend just trying to adapt to the slowness of the torpedo and lead accordingly. One thing you can do is just find the target's broadside before even going in for the strike, and try to catch them when they're going to be stuck in a situation where they have to either angle to you or angle to your teammates. That'll be the best way to go for launching any type of torpedoes. It secures the most amount of hits. So going back here, slot 3 I'll just leave open. It's really just up to you what you want to do. Slot 4, it's also up in the air. It mostly just comes down to what kind of carrier you're playing and what kind of build you're investing into. Never take this. This is not good. There's no reason to ever take this because carriers already have a very fast fire extinguishing time. I think it's like what, like 5 seconds or something? 2 seconds? It's very fast. There's no reason to take this. So aircraft HP, torpedo HP, bomber HP. So one of these, don't take the airstrike modification. There's no reason to. You already have automatic ASW, very good prediction, and very wide blast radius. So in this case, midway, for example, midway you have 2 options to go, either a speed build or a unique upgrade build, which is more heavily focused on your dive bombers. For me, building a unique upgrade is, in my opinion, the way to go for midway, even after the nerf. So because I'm investing more into bombers, I will put more bomber HP because they're going to be my main source of damage. If you're playing something like a Hakuryu, for example, Hakuryu is very focused on torpedoes, right? Not rockets or the bombs. So you want to put it into torpedo bomber HP because these are your main source of damage. That's basically how it goes. For things like the Soviet carriers, Nakhimov is mostly up in the air between, it depends on which squadron you prefer most. Skip bombers, torpedo bombers, or your rockets. I value the rockets way more on the Soviet tech tree line because of just how hard they hit. Compared to something like, let's say, a Chkalov. Chkalov is the Soviet premium tier 8 carrier. Chkalov has no rockets. It says she has dive bombers, skip bombers, and torpedo bombers. I will just put it into skip bombers because this is going to be your main squadron that you'll be using for pretty much majority of the game until mid to late game when you start spamming your torpedo bombers. But in the end, it's just up to you what you like to run. Just have that mentality in mind where it's whichever squadron you value most, or whichever squadron you feel like it's the most important on the carrier you're playing, or whichever one you just like using more, you can just equip it accordingly. Slot 5. Okay, slot 5 is also a very good slot to talk about. So majority of the time you'll be taking FCM1 because you get the 5% preparation time, but also you get the +2 planes in reserves. Now +2 planes may not seem like a lot, but there are cases where, let's say you're using your rockets. In this case, Midway has access to two different rockets. One is HVARs and one is Tiny Tims. HVARs basically have a shorter machine gun animation delay and is most suited for like lighter targets, destroyers specifically. So in some cases for me, when I'm using my HVARs and I'm trying to hunt down a DD, I use my rocket squadron, and then when I return, because I have FCM1 slotted in, the +2 planes will allow me to just keep spamming rockets back to back without having to wait for the original squadron to return back to its reserves. I can just keep spamming the DD. The 5% difference is not very significant because, as you can see here, is 82 seconds for each aircraft preparation. If I slot this in, it changes it to 77. That's a 5-second difference, and for a single plane, and that's not really that significant at all. Over the course of the battle, I mean, maybe you'll get like a few planes back, but I mean, it really just matters of how long the game lasts versus how many planes you lose. And most of the time, if you're playing smart, you won't really ever run into a situation where you're reliant on plane regeneration, right? The other one to consider is concealment system. So concealment is basically standard, it's straightforward. You lower your detection from 15.4 and 12.5 air detection. You go down to 13.8 and 11.2. This makes you harder to be detected by surface ships, harder to be spotted by planes. CV has to fly towards you even further to drop a fighter and perma spot you. and you can quickly, turn away and run away, and it gets annoying for the enemy aircraft carrier that's trying to shoot you down, or spot you, and other teammates trying to shoot you down. This is worth considering if you are considering pushing up. So let's say something like a Soviet carrier, like a Nakhimov with unique up or with the concealment. You go down to 11-2 and 10-2, which is pretty insane, and you can push up very hard in a lot of the matches you play in the Nakhimov. As long as you play smart and you know when to push, 11-2 surface concealment is insane for an aircraft carrier. So this is something to worth consider, definitely. Now the final one, consumables. Squadron consumables, it used to improve your consumable duration. A lot of people like to run consumable build Haku and increase the torpedo heal duration to like something insane, like I think it was like 8 seconds or something from the usual 5 seconds. But Wargaming changed it with the inclusion of the support carrier line. They basically just made it so that it gives you +1 consumables on your squadrons. So what this means is, you see is 2, 3, 3. If you add this in, changes it to 3, 4, 4. This gets very annoying, specifically for when you're building fighter builds, because the inclusion of this, usually at stock you have 9 fighters to begin with. If you use this, it bumps it up to 12. On top of that, if you invest into this skill, which gives you another 1 fighter for each of your squadrons, that bumps it up to 15 fighters with insane range and very, very difficult counterplay to this. You'll basically never run out of fighters. So if you're going full fighter build on the support carrier line that's already very strong with that area, you're gonna be very annoying for the enemy carrier to even play the game or get any strikes off. So this consumable is only for the alternate carrier line that has been recently released as Secure Town Independence. Otherwise, I just won't consider this at all. It's not really worth it in my opinion. Sure, you can go fighter build on your normal strike carriers, like anything except for the SX line, but it's just not worth it. Just go concealment or flight control. When in doubt, just go FCM 1. So here we go. Slot 6, tier 10 carriers. Sorry, tier 10 super ships. So safest bet is going to be FCM mod 2 because you have the extra squadron speed. 5% may not seem like a lot, but it definitely changes the way you get to play the game, because the extra speed means less time flying to your target, less time the planes take to return to safe altitude to gain invulnerability, and less time for the planes to return back to the aircraft carrier. It's just that whole process every single time you're playing, every single second that you're playing an aircraft carrier. You get value out of this one for every single match. HP, 7.5% HP. It's something to consider, like maybe if the aircraft carrier already has a lot of HP, for example, Franklin D. Roosevelt. That's like the only carrier I would recommend heal mod on, but otherwise it's just safer to go FCM mod 2 for the speed. Now carriers for tier 10, for the tech tree, they do come with a unique upgrade. So in this case, Midway increases the bomb damage and the bomber cruising speed. It's more of a drawback really, a trade-off, not a drawback, a trade-off, where you gain a power boost in a specific squadron, but you lower the capabilities of the other two. This is completely up to you, but if I were to give you a recommendation of which ones are worth getting in the current day, I would say the safest bet would be the MVR's unique upgrade. What this does is it focuses on your torpedo bombers, it reduces your torpedo arming distance, improves your torpedo damage, and improves your torpedo bomber HP. Torpedoes are the most consistent ordnance for any aircraft carrier in the game. It is something to be very valued whenever you're playing an aircraft carrier. So this is why I believe MVR unique upgrade is one of the most consistent and the safest purchases you can make in the armory for coal. Up next, it's kind of just up in the air at this point. Midway is nice even after the nerf. You just have to adjust the way you play. Really careful, play carefully when you're using the other two squadrons, because you don't have the speed boost anymore. You're basically playing on stock speeds, and these planes are already very slow. So you really want to pay attention whenever you're going in for a strike. The Audacious is just not good. Just don't use it. I mean, it makes your ship stealthier, improves your rudder time so you can turn better. It's just not good though. I don't know why they made it like this. Audacious, like more stealthier or stuff like that, but it's just weird. I don't recommend this at all. And then the Hakuryu. Hakuryu is it used to be insane, absolutely broken. Okay, squadron speed up to 12.5%. So you're basically zooming all over the place, but it reduces your engine boost duration by 30%. This is more of like a skill check upgrade where, yes, it's still very good. The only issue is if you are a W key masher and you don't really focus on how much boost you have, this is not going to be for you. This is a very difficult unique upgrade to utilize to its fullest. A lot of the times players will be running out of fuel during the actual attack strike, and which results to a lot more planes being lost versus just running the speed mod. So when in doubt, you can just go with speed mod for Haku and save your coal. But yeah, definitely MVR's unique upgrade is the safest. So there's that about the upgrades and modules. Now we can move over to the skills. Alright, and here we are with the commander skills. So for carriers, there are a lot of different opinions and recommendations for what each carrier should be running, but I'm just going to give you just a straightforward rundown of just the most simplest builds that you can run on pretty much majority of the carriers, and some skills that are worth considering and that might change up what you want to be running on your own specific carrier. So first things first, always take air supremacy. Next, you take the improves engines for squadron speed, and then you take these 2 3-pointers for defense, plane survival, and this is going to be your first 9 skills that you take on pretty much majority of your carriers. There's no arguments here. These are probably the most consistent, most recommended first 9 points that you would ever spend on a carrier, and I don't think there's any other reason why you would use any other first 9 points on anything else. And so this is where we start splitting off into specific carriers and builds and how each player likes to spec up their commander. So for me personally, I like to first go for the first 4 pointers. It's either going to be proximity fuse or it's going to be bomber speed. It'll depend on which carrier I'm playing. If I like speccing more into bombs, in this case midway, I'm running unique upgraded midway, so I will be taking the bomber speed. If I was playing something like a Nakhimov, for example, or a Soviet carrier or a Max Immelman, I will be speccing into bomber speed as well, because faster skip bombers is always going to be better. Now what you can also do is take proximity fuse. Proximity fuse is very, many people are confused about this who don't play carriers. So basically this doesn't mean that you have more damage from your alpha. It's not adding more damage to your alpha. It's the fact that this is basically penetrating 10% more from the target's anti-torpedo protection, therefore allowing more damage to go through. It's 2 very different things. Okay, this doesn't give you bonus damage. It's just allowing more damage to be going through that is already being negated otherwise. Okay, so this is very good for things that are very focused on torpedoes. So let's say like Malta or unique upgrade Richthofen or Essex or Haku. These are all very good carriers to run proximity fuse on, and it's pretty much recommended to always run them with this skill. Now what I like to run recently, or not recently, well, for a while now, what I like to run is the anti-flak skill. A lot of controversy with this skill. People often believe that you just have to dodge flak and you never have to run this skill, which they are correct, but only partially correct. They're missing the other half of what this skill also provides. So yes, you can dodge all the flak clouds while you're going up to the strike, when you're flying around, and when you execute the strike. But after you release your ordnance or you recall your planes will still be at risk at eating flak on the way up to the safe altitude. It does not matter how close you are, it does not matter how how bunched up the enemy ships are, or if it's a singled out target, their flak will always be shooting while you're on your way up to the safe altitude. Okay? Especially for carriers that utilize long distance strikes like skip bombers, or let's say Tiny Tim rockets or Soviet carriers rockets. They are always at risk of eating a flak cloud on the way up to the safe altitude. And during this travel distance, this travel phase, they can't, you can't control what they do, and you're just bound back by RNG. And this skill helps out significantly with their survival. If you guys run modifications to your game with the Aslan's mod pack, you guys should be running this mod called Squadron HP modification. And what that does is it shows your planes, your squadron, your fighter squadrons, all squadrons in the games, their total HP pool, and you can really tell just how much HP they're losing while the plane is going up to the safe altitude. It's very noticeable on the Soviet carriers. So let's say for Soviet carriers, there's like 7,000 or 6,000 total squadron HP on like the torpedo bombers or skip bombers. After the Soviet carrier releases its ordnance and flies up to the safe altitude, that 5,000 or 6,000 HP pool will just be dropped down to like 1,000 or 2,000. That means every single plane in that squadron ate a flak cloud, and they were whittled down to like, they lost like pretty much 90% of their HP. They basically have the black smoke flying out of their planes. That is the case when you don't run enhanced aircraft armor. Now, when you do run enhanced aircraft armor, this helps the survivability of those planes significantly. And I highly recommend using this skill if you are getting quite annoyed of losing your planes on the way up to the safe altitude. People always argue, oh no, this is not happening, it's just, skill issue. This is a very consistent skill for defense, and I believe it is a very good skill if you want to drop bomber speed for it and you want to take proximity fuse instead and run these two skills together. Yes, the bomber skill is very, very good. It's very important to take because 5% increased speed on top of this, on top of the slot 6 speed boost. It's very, very strong. So you can run it interchangeably between the proxy fuse and bomber speed. It just depends on what kind of carrier you're using. So in this case for me, for midway, I'll be taking these two 4-pointers like this. And then now we have 4 points remaining. So that's basically it for the 4-pointers for strike carriers. Is you're either going to take one of these 3 skills. Okay. For me, I like to run EAA, so I'll be running it with bomber speed for midway. Now, remaining 4-pointers, what you can do, or what I like to do, is consider how quickly do my reticles aim down. Okay, how long does it take for them to aim down to the perfect reticle size? Bombs, rockets, torpedoes, right? That will determine whether or not I take site stabilization. Some people like to use this skill. I personally don't run this skill because I prefer to spend this 7 or these 4 to 7.5%. It's just not a big deal, so I prefer to spend 3-pointers elsewhere. Something I like to do is take something like torpedo bomber. It improves my torpedo arming distance by 10%. This means easier strikes and less distance I have to be away from the target when I release the torpedoes. Last 2 points I take into these 2 skills. Squadron engine boost duration by 5% and last gasp, which is basically midway has 9 planes, sets of 3 strikes. So if I'm on my final 3 planes in the squadron, I'll get a full bar of engine boost, which helps significantly with the survival and the setting up the next strike. So this is pretty much how my skill will be looking like for my commander for the midway. Now if we take something like, let's say, the Soviet carriers, again, same mentality. Air supremacy, improve engine boost, aircraft armor, and survivability expert as the first 9. And then I would take the bomber flight control, and then I would take enhanced aircraft armor, same thing. Now what you can do here though is, because of how strong and devastating the Soviet torpedo bombers are, you can actually run proximity fuse. You can run all of these 3 together. There's something a lot of people like to use because the issue with running the same build as a midway is you have 1 point that's spared, and there's nothing to really put it into. You don't want to put it into this one because the engine boost cooldown time is just not that good. This is pretty much useless, having 1 extra fighter on your carrier. Not the squadron, but the carrier, the planes that fly out automatically. Improved radius is just not good either. So what people like to do is they just like to run proximity fuse and then just launch the torpedoes far away, because these are quite fast for torpedoes. 43 knots, I believe. 41 knots. So this is pretty much what people like to run. It's what I like to run as well for my Soviet carrier. So this is pretty standard right here. Now we can talk about the Hakuryu. Hakuryu is very focused on torpedo bombers, right? And she has a very large squadron size. I think it's like 12 planes total in her torpedo squadron, and 12 planes as well in her dive bombers as well. So standard 9 points first. And because she uses a lot of torpedoes, focusing mainly on torpedoes, I'll be running enhanced aircraft armor with proximity fuse. And this is what would be the standard for this commander. And now Haku is very reliant on torpedoes, so what you can do is use torpedo bomber, and then you can use improved engine boost and last gasp. An alternative that you can run is something like this, side stab, and then run it with improved engine boost to make it look like this. It helps out with the chain striking torpedo spamming back to back on a single target, but usually I like to be more, have more precision and with my strikes and aim better. So I like to run it like this, starting the attacks more spaced out instead of just spamming the same target like back to back. So this is something that I would pretty much run on my Haku. And now support carriers. Support carriers have 2 different types of builds. I'll go over both of them. The first one is going to be something like this. Okay, pretty much the same as what you will see on the Haku. You can actually drop enhanced aircraft armor and put it into bomber flight control, because you have main source of damage is coming for your torpedo bombers, but your bomber flight control helps out with your very mediocre speed on your tactical sky pirates. These are 188 with this, but without it, you're looking at 177. It's pretty much like midways, but more bomber means you can fly around faster. It just helps out a lot. So this is what you'll be running for strike carrier Essex, something like this. Now, if you do want to division or utilize Essex strengths to its fullest, I would recommend going fighter build. You can run something like this, taking interceptor and taking search and destroy. What I would do is take enhanced aircraft armor and proxy fuse, and this will be my build for the Essex. I like to run enhanced aircraft armor because, sure, Essex has its tactical squadron from rockets and its bombers, so you don't really utilize it as much as you would with other carriers. But it's for those moments when I'm using my very precious torpedo bombers, and I want to get the maximum value out of them, and also increase their survivability to its fullest. This is why I kind of run enhanced aircraft armor. I just use aircraft armor for pretty much every single carrier now. So unless it's tier 8 carriers, you could just steamroll and just run full damage and not even care about it. But this is something that I would run for the Essex. It's something that I would say is probably the best build. Sure, you can drop this and just run something like this too. This also works. I just personally like the aircraft armor, so I will run something like this. Okay, so there we go. That is the, I'll say, somewhat in-depth explanation of what I run and what carrier skills are available and the upgrades, and why you should run this or that. Hopefully it helped you. I do have a build that I'll be linking down in the description or the comment section. It shows all my builds that I run. You can take a look at that. It's a Google Doc, so feel free to take a look at that, and you can get some idea of how to build your next carrier. Yeah, that's gonna be it. I will see you guys in the next one. Hopefully this series goes well and I have enough motivation to continue on. Let me know what you think about it, and I will try to do some more carrier how-to or builds and guides and stuff like that for this playlist. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.